Okay, it's recording now. So I just wanted to give you a quick heads up about what TILOS is very briefly, just in case you didn't know. And then I'm going to show you why the method that I'm proposing I think is much better. And I'm going to demonstrate that, okay, in 10 minutes or so. So TILOS is a piece of German software that's been bought by Trimble, and it's only for linear planning. So it's railways, roads, tunnels. So it's used quite extensively all over the place. And oh yeah, just put that on screen. So this system has got a panel on the right hand side, which if you click on that double-headed arrow, you can minimize it, and then you'll see the whole screen. So just in case that's a problem for you. My name is Richard Ronrod. I've got a background in the construction industry, but I've been dealing with TILOS for about 7 years. So I've got quite a good handle on the rail industry as well. So why people use time distance planning is you might use a network diagram or a bar charts, but when you've got a linear project, you've got another dimension to play with. And it doesn't matter to TILOS whether location goes left to right or right to left, or time goes up and down or down to up. All of that can be changed. But the fundamental thing is if you see the same activities against a grid rather than just a time axis, you see two bits of information you don't get any other way. You see where you will be at a certain time or vice versa, and you see the rate of production. You see where you go slower and faster, and then if you've got that following activity, you see that where there might be a clash, and you can avoid that, or you can take some avoiding action. And of course, the absolute killer for rail possessions is the train and the wagon sitting on the adjacent line, and that's got to move off before the next one can come in. And you know the length of that train, and that headway that people call it is a vital piece of information. So so this is TILOS on screen now. Can you see that, Sep?
Yes.
Okay, so just very quick, there's three parts to it really. There's this bit on the left hand side here called the Explorer that's got a sort of hierarchical view of a library of information that we've created in advance. On the right hand side of the screen is the main sort of area, and we're going to work on screen graphically, but things that we select on screen we can also work on numerically on these tabs on the foot of the screen. So there's three areas: the Explorer, the time distance diagram, and the tabs. Okay, so and if we click somewhere, we get these, you can see what you've clicked on and you're going to do something. So one thing that people are quite keen on is that you can have the sort of assets on the track numerically. So this is part of the training course, for example, and I explain where these come from. But essentially, we could import those as numbers, and we can draw a map about at the head of the diagram to show you where things are in relation to what you're doing. So that tends to be popular because it's a quick win and it's informative, So, but essentially, what people are doing are then editing this diagram and saying what's going to happen. And so, so the long-winded way that people have done it so far, and the other thing to remember is that you've got a library of what are called task templates, which are standard ways of doing things with a given rate of production and duration. And this library is, and that's what I'm talking about, making sure that this library works. And you've got a version of this, but whether it's, and that's for the discussion. But if I create a new task, I'll say, well, the first thing we're going to do is take the possession. And those two green lines are where is the extent of the work site. So I create an event between those two lines, and it's got a fixed duration of 20 minutes that I can't change. I can change if I know how to do it. I might say that's 25 minutes in this case. But these are these are the norms that you would expect. So we're going to take the possession, and then we're going to take the work site, which is a given of 10 minutes, and we can link these together. So Anderson family have now joined us. Is that Amir?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello,
No,
mate.
it's David Anderson. I managed to log on
Okay,
to my home computer.
I see. Anderson. Okay. So somebody's got some noise
Right.
in the
Sorry, carry
background.
on.
So Amir, I think I can hear the background noise. So I'm going to mute. I'm going to mute you, Amir, so that send me a text if you want to make a comment. Okay. So so the other thing we can do then, of course, is link these together like you can in projects. So we can say when this is finished, this one here can start. And once we have linked it, we can reschedule it and it's going to start at its earliest position. So none of that is too radical. But then if we say we're going to take the isolation as the next thing we're going to do, which again has got a preset duration, we're going to link that together. We're going to reschedule, and then we're going to do something linear. So we're then going to cut into panels using one of the different methods of doing so. And so in this particular case, we're working from right to left. And as I draw that line, the rate of production has been preset in the library, and we can do 200 yards an hour and there's a setup time at the beginning. So if we say we can do that as soon as we've taken the isolation, we've got a linear process there that's actually on the track itself. We're cutting that into panels, and then we're going to load it into we're going to then load panels using an RRV, maybe with RRVs, and this shape is a moving train, and you might have stationary trains, so this is the sort of thing that we need to get into. But essentially the size of this the length of that tail is how many wagons you need to cover that length. So the shorter distance we cover, we need less wagons. The greater distance, we need more wagons. And this is how long the train is. So, and then if we say, well, we've got to finish that burning out 10 minutes before we do that, and then we can't start that for 20 minutes or something. So you see, this goes on and on and on. And people, they get the hang of it and they think it's great, but they find it quite tedious to do that. And when we come on to then actually doing the work itself, we're going to do a rough dig, for example. We're going to do a traditional dig with 2 excavators in this particular case. And again, we get a moving train where we're loading the spoil onto, and if we look in our ballast calculator, it tells us how many tons per yard we've got to excavate, which is a total of 2,200. So if I look in my ballast calculator, and I'm just making it up, but it's obviously every job's different, so you've got to make that change. So that's only going to do 1.7 tons. So the length of train needed for that, the number of wagons needed for that, is calculated on this tab here. So we only need 29 wagons to cover that amount of work. And then when should these two start? And this is why bar charts don't work, because all we've got to say is we don't want, because these are on the adjacent line, of course, we don't want, this train has to clear the track before this train can come into it. So we can't bring it in that early because they'll crash into each other. So they've got to stay away, and we can enforce that with a logic link in TILOS. We can say those two things cannot touch each other. And that's again another, and maybe we're going to introduce a safety margin and say they're going to be 50 yards apart. And I'm doing this in yards, but I think the ones that you use are in meters, which is not a problem. But and so we've got a plan of action that we've taken, and it could take us, you've got to know TILOS quite well to do that. So what I'm proposing to do, what other organizations in your situation have done, is we've created in advance what are called task groups, standard ways of doing the whole thing. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to select all of these tasks and delete them. So this is what, in the training course, I train people how to do one of each of these things, so they're getting used to the software. But at the end of the day, we're going to do a CAT 11 job, let's say. So I'm going to click on this icon. I'm going to just draw a box between those two green lines. I'm going to choose which standard method we're going to use and choose these particular options. We'll start at 2300 hours. And so look, all of those activities are created in one operation because we've created them in advance, all logically linked. So all we've got to do there is say, well, on the rough dig, we're doing that at 3.37, our ballast calculator says, and if we're laying bottom ballast, we're doing that at 2.2 or something. And we need to, and so this includes milestones that Network Rail want to see, and there's something called a DWWP activity. And what we've also got to do with that is say when that should end. So, and this is not always the end of the possession. So you put that in first, and once we've done that, so that's all we've got to do, and then we recalculate, and then we've done it. That is it. So that's what I try and train people to do. In 10 minutes, you can make a whole plan. But what it hinges on is creating these task templates in advance, and they're being your standard, embodying your standard processes, output rates, and we need to, have those prepared in advance, and then I need to modify the training course to incorporate your steps, not other people's steps. And so that's why it's not just a one-day training course. It's not just me in a room teaching people how to use the software. There's all this preparation needs doing, and that's why you need to have somebody in your organization who knows what intimately, what constitutes a Cat 11 and a Cat 12, and we embody that in a task group in advance, and then then I adapt the training course, and that's where the upfront consultancy comes. But the benefit is people will use it far, far, far more readily if they don't have to spend so much time creating one in the first place. So that's my pitch, gentlemen. I'm stopping the recording.